The Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And this is the Gameday preview podcast where the Parramatta Eels take on the South Sydney Rabbitohs at Accor Stadium in Indigenous Round, round number 12 of the NRL. And this game is being played at Accor Stadium Saturday night, 7:35pm. Now, this is going to be an interesting game because the Eels sit in 14th spot on the ladder. The Rabbitohs are in 17th spot on the ladder. Both teams not where they want to be, and both last start losers in Magic Round, with the Rabbitohs just going down to the North Queensland Cowboys, but the Parramatta Eels getting flogged by the Melbourne Storm. So that both of these teams will want to have that bounce back factor and get a win here. And look, the season is not over yet, but the more games they lose from now on, then it will definitely be over. That is for sure. So look, just running through a few stats before we get into the game. And just before I do that, I was unable to get in contact with a massive South Sydney fan. Unfortunately, just time got away from me and wasn't able to do that. So that's why I'm doing the game day preview by myself. But look, as I said, let's just get into a few stats into this game before we get into the actual game in 2024. Now, the last 10 games that these two teams have played it has South Sydney winning 8, Parramatta 2, and the last 4 games at Accor Stadium, South Sydney have won 4 of those, the last 4 games. So a pretty good record for South Sydney there over the recent times and at Accor Stadium. In overall history though, Parramatta and South have played 140 games. Parramatta stand on 61, South Sydney on 76. At South Sydney home games, 66 times they've played, 24 wins for Parramatta, 41 for South. At this venue at Accor Stadium since 2007 to 2022. Now, keep in mind, last year's fixture between these two sides, which was also in Indigenous Round, was played at Allianz Stadium, where a few people were calling it Trelliance Stadium after Latrell Mitchell, but no games played at Accor Stadium last year between these two sides. It was played at Allianz Stadium. So overall, since 2007 to 2022, Accor Stadium, 19 games, and South Sydney, they hold a convincing lead there, 13 wins to Parramatta's 5. Last year's game, as I said, at Allianz Stadium, the Eels won 36-16. Last game, the last game at Accor Stadium in 2022, it was round 16. The Rabbitohs won 30 points to 12. Now, in that game, Clint Gutherson scored 2 tries, and Mitchell Moses kicked 2 goals. And look, they're not playing in this game, this round 12 fixture in 2024. So we won't see them on the try scoring list or the goal kicking list. That is for sure. But a little bit coincidental that the 2022 game that Gutho scored 2 tries and Mitchell kicked 2 goals. But look, the first time they ever played, way back in 1947 when Parramatta entered the competition. It was round 2, so Parramatta's second ever game in the rugby league competition. South won 35 points to 22. Now, to some big games that I can think of anyway, and you, the listeners, might be able to let me know a few more of sort of memorable games, big games, memorable moments. But I've just jotted down a few here that I'll rattle off now. 2017, round 26. Now, who could ever forget Semirad Radra? 3 tries. And look, there was one of those tries, I'm not too sure which one it was, whether it was his last try of that night, but it was a length of the field job. And I think it was off a kick return, and he's just in and out, weaving through the defence. And the Channel 9 commentator at the time, Sterlo, look, Rabs was getting excited, Sterlo was getting excited. Sterlo said, "Don't pass it, just go," something along those lines. And look, that was a great try that Semi scored. Look, there was 2014 where Chris Sandow made a break down the sideline. Looked for all money that he was going to score a try, but Adam Reynolds, his opposition halfback on that night, ran him down and put him into touch, and Chrissy Sandow didn't score a try. The 2020 semi-final played at Combank Stadium, which was Bankwest Stadium back then. Hayes Dunster made his first grade debut. He stepped in for Michael Jennings on that night and made his debut in first grade. And look, what a game to make your first grade debut in a semi-final in 2020. 2016, the last year of Parramatta Stadium as it was known, or Pertex Stadium as it was known, the Adam Reynolds conversion from the sideline. Now, if you go back and look at the footage, I think that was also an Indigenous game as well, because I remember, I think it was Parramatta were wearing their Indigenous jerseys there. I don't know if they had an Indigenous round back then, but Parramatta were, and I'm not 100% sure about South Sydney, but they were, certainly Parramatta was celebrating Indigenous culture then by wearing those jerseys. But Adam Reynolds, he kicked the winning goal from the sideline. South Sydney won 22 points to 20, and you can just see in the footage that he just turns around and smiles and smirks to the crowd as if to say, you know, you were giving it to me during the kick and I got it and we win the game. So that was an interesting one too. Way back in 1986, there was a 12-all draw. Now, for those of you who are lucky enough to have Foxtel, over the course of the summer, when there's no games on, they generally replay a few old games. This one does get a run at times, and it was a 12-all draw on that day. It was round 24 at Parramatta Stadium. Steve Ella was playing in jersey number 44. Can you believe that? Peter Sterling got sin binned for fighting. Can you believe that? I think he was actually fighting or trying to aim up against Les Davidson of all people. Can you believe that one? Look, Mario Fennick, he got sin binned. Ian Roberts got sin binned. It was a classic game, and if you ever get the chance to watch it, just watch it because it was great. And Craig Tugger-Coleman got sent off in that game as well, but it ended up being a 12-all draw. Now, that's just a few of the games that I can think of off the top of my head that involve these two teams. If there's another game that stands out for yourselves, let me know, and certainly let me know, and I'll try and have a look at it and see if there's any footage of it, and definitely get the details of it anyway, and see if I can remember that one anyway. But look, over the modern or the recent times anyway, South Sydney is a little bit of a bogey side for the Parramatta Eels. As I said at the top there of the stats, the last 10 games, South have won 8, Parramatta 2. So it was actually, as a Parramatta fan, it was actually good last season to get that win in Indigenous Round at Allianz Stadium, and just because they had been that sort of bogey side for the Parramatta Eels. This game on Saturday will probably be a little bit of a different one, as I said before. Both teams struggling this season in 2024. Both teams missed the semi-finals in 2023. And look, this one will be an interesting one, that's for sure. So it could be a toss of the coin sort of game, this one. You just never know what is going to happen in this one. As I said, round 12, it is the last game of Super Saturday, 7:35pm. The Rabbitohs take on the Eels at Accor Stadium. And look, if we look at the sides, we'll start off with the Parramatta side. There's no changes to that team. The only one that no changes to that team that got flogged by Melbourne, 48 points to 16 up there in Brisbane, which I guess probably ultimately led to Brad Arthur's sacking, unfortunately, on Monday night. So there's no changes to this team. The only difference, and when I say only difference, Ryan Madison, he was named Team List Tuesday last week before Magic Round, but pulled out late. I do believe it could have been even on the Sunday as well, an hour or so before kickoff, and Bryce Cartwright took his spot in that second row spot. Bryce was already named on the bench anyway, so he was the only change in that one. And Luca Moretti, he goes back to the reserves bench. He actually made his spot onto the interchange bench last week as well. So it is the same team named by interim coach Trent Barrett. And look, a lot of people have said, well, why didn't you make mass changes to this week's team against the Rabbitohs? And I guess it's probably, look, he's only just got his feet under the desk as interim head coach. I guess he will see how the team performs this week under a new coach, and if he needs to, he will make changes to that side next week against the Cronulla Sharks, who are flying on top of the ladder. So I guess all players have been put on notice, and he will definitely be watching this performance by these players this week to see what they do and what they come up with. And if he needs to, well, they will make changes. He will make changes to that side for round 13 against the Sharks. But the South Sydney side, it's the same side that played the North Queensland Cowboys up at Magic Round, except the only change, and this was a late change from Team List Tuesday this week, is that Cody Walker is out of this side. So a big blow for the South Sydney Rabbitohs. He is out of this side this week, so a major loss there. And look, other than that, no major changes, but this side has been struggling this year, as have the Parramatta Eels, but more so, I guess, South Sydney, who find themselves on the bottom of the ladder. Latrell Mitchell, we all know his story this year. He has been in the news probably pretty much each and every week. Maybe not the weeks that he was suspended, but he certainly has had a year, I guess you would say, maybe for him that he would like to forget at the moment. Hopefully, maybe for his standards, he can turn that one around. So we obviously had it started off for South Sydney over in Las Vegas. Jason Demetriou got sacked. We've seen Latrell Mitchell, that infamous radio interview on Triple M up in Brisbane. Even just last week or the week before, the Latrell Mitchell and Braithen Astor, not square up, but not confrontation either, but words exchanged at a restaurant in Sydney. So Latrell has definitely been in the news, and as I said before, he would probably want to forget this season so far as it has happened, because he's been in the news nearly each and every week. But can he play himself into a berth for a New South Wales Origin spot? Look, I don't think so. I don't think he will get picked for New South Wales. And my Troy's take on the New South Wales and Queensland sides will be coming out over the weekend as well. Hopefully before the teams get picked. So you can hear my thoughts on that one, but I'll give you an exclusive scoop, I guess. I haven't picked Latrell Mitchell. I just don't think he will get picked, even though he can perform in big games and he can step up in big games, and certainly State of Origin for New South Wales and all the Queensland players is a big game. So I just don't think he will get picked in that centre position. Alex Johnston, well, he just loves playing against Parramatta. There is some ridiculous stat going around that in the last 4 games or something like that, he's scored 9 tries against Parramatta. It's generally along that left-hand side, so he will want to add to his try-scoring tally and try and get up to that Ken Irvine try-scoring record. He'll want to do that against Parramatta, as he has such a good record against playing against Parramatta. Jack Whiten has been moved to 5'8" for this game, and look, that will be interesting. He has played the season so far at South Sydney in the centre position. So the Rabbitohs looking for a bit of a spark, something different, trying something different to get a result, and they put Jack in at 5'8". So that'll be interesting to see. Obviously, he played there down at the Canberra Raiders. Damien Cook, he is under a little bit of pressure to keep his State of Origin spot for New South Wales. Can he do it? I don't think so, but you just have to wait and see. And a couple of Queenslanders as well, trying to burst their way into the squad as well. So, look, probably a pretty evenly matched game. Look, as I said before, Parramatta sit in 14th spot, South Sydney in 17th. Parramatta are 1 from their last 5, having a win over the Cowboys. And sorry about this, South Sydney fans, but for you guys, it is 0 from your last 5. Parramatta only 3 wins in 2024, and for South Sydney, only 1 win in 2024. In terms of points scored and points conceded, look, it's only about 25 points difference between the two sides, so not a lot of points compared to other teams that have been scored. Parramatta has scored 187 and South Sydney 162. Defence-wise, it's about 58 points. Parramatta conceded 290 and South Sydney won 348. Completion rates, though, which are very important, which will win you games in the NRL, are pretty much on par. Parramatta 77% on average and South Sydney 76%. And look, wins at Accor Stadium. And this is overall. So Parramatta have a 48% winning record at Accor Stadium, and obviously South Sydney have played double the amount of games than Parramatta. They've played 209 games for 118 wins for a 56% winning record there. So with that being their home ground, they've obviously played a lot more games there. So does that make a difference? Yeah, potentially. Is it going to be a massive crowd? Well, that is the miracle question, I guess, because I guess with these two sides struggling like they are at the moment, you would like to think that there would be a big crowd there. I guess you would get about 15,000, and I think that could be generous in this game, being Saturday night at Accor Stadium. I do know that Eels members did get free tickets to this game as well, so to encourage people to go along to this one. So I'm not really sure how much of a crowd figure they'll get there. But as I said, if they get something like 15,000 there, that will be a good outcome as in a crowd figure, that's for sure. Now, to my predictions, I think Parramatta can win this game, and is that because of the coach sacking? And we see that when a coach gets sacked, usually the team comes out the next week and absolutely blitzes it and wins the game. No, I don't think that will be the case. I think it might be just coincidental that happens, and the fact that they got flogged by Melbourne last week in Magic Round, Brad Arthur gets sacked. I think they just probably want to try and turn their season around whilst they still can. So I think Parramatta will win, and I have tipped Parramatta. If you have followed my tipping podcast, it comes out on Tuesdays. So I have tipped Parramatta to win. I don't know how the Rabbitohs are going to go. This is a very special round, I guess, for the Rabbitohs, as they are probably known a little bit as an Indigenous club. That's not to say that the other clubs in the NRL are not like an Indigenous sort of known club, but South Sydney probably more are. If you look at some of their players that have played, some of the South Sydney Indigenous players, some that I can recognise from over the years and even now include the likes of Dean Witters, who has played at both Parramatta and South Sydney. You obviously got Cody Walker, the late Kyle Turner, Dale Trindle, Tricky. He used to play for South Sydney, I think Canterbury as well. Who else have we got? Craig Salvatore as well, former Rabbitoh and Rooster. Chris Sandow, as I mentioned before, he played for Parramatta and South Sydney as well. Reece Robertson, obviously Latrell Mitchell, his brother Shaq as well. Wes Patton, there's a blast from the past name as well. Greg Inglis, of course, Alex Johnston. Who else? We've got Dane Gagai, who now plays for the Newcastle Knights. Jacob Gagai, who plays for the South Sydney Rabbitohs now. Owen Craigie, Bo Champion. So there's a lot of names there that are familiar to myself and that I have seen play from over the years. If you look at some of the Eels players, Indigenous players from over the years. We'll start at the recent times, and obviously you've got Jermaine Hopgood, who was the face of the Indigenous jersey launch last year and this year, who is playing in this game. Jai Field, who's over in England now. Blake Ferguson, Will Smith, Josh Hoffman, Bevan French, Nathan Peets, who also played for South Sydney as well. The late great Carl Webb, Anthony Mitchell as well, doing great things on the Gold Coast with rugby league. Tamana Tahu, Willie Tonga, who we saw at the Canterbury Dragons game as well. He got to lead out the Canterbury Bankstown side. Jason Moody, PJ Marsh, Dean Witters, as I mentioned. Dennis Moran, who I've had on the podcast as well. John Simon, who I've had on the podcast. David and Glenn Lydiard as well. Steve Ella as well sticks out. And the immortal Arthur Beetson as well. So there's some great names there too of Eels Indigenous players from over the years as well. So there's been some great ones there, that is for sure. Look, this game, as I said, Parramatta to win 36 points to 20. I think they can score a lot of points in this game. We've seen that South Sydney have leaked in a lot more points than Parramatta this season, so I think that may continue. Look, I'm going to say Will Penasini first try scorer as well. And I think as much pressure as he has been under this year to not only retain his spot in first grade, but also his spot at the club, I think, as well. Sean Lane, he'll have a big game as well. I just have a feeling he will. And we'll just have to wait and see. Probably you guys will call me crazy about saying that for the season that he's had so far. But I just think maybe he might have a big game this game. I've said in the past as well that I don't think he is an 80-minute player. I think he may get a rest again during this game as well. We'll just have to wait and see. But look, as I said, it's going to be an interesting game. The left-hand defence of Parramatta will have to keep an eye on Latrell, Alex Johnston as well. Just because they have carved them up over that side in previous years, and it hasn't been pretty, that is for sure. So, if you cannot get to the game, and you are in Sydney, go and watch it at Parramatta Leagues Club as well. They've got a massive big screen in Sturlow's Bar. Obviously, it is on Foxtel as well, if you're lucky enough to have that one, and a KO as well. So it will also, I think, be on 2GB in Sydney 873 radio as well. So if you can't watch it, you can listen to it on the radio, but if you can't get to the game, Parramatta Leagues Club is also a place to be as well. Have a bite to eat there before the game. Watch the game in Sturlow's, massive screen there. Have a few quiet Jack's Pale Ales as well. So enjoy this game. As I said, I'm going to tip Parramatta to win. I hope I'm right. I'm not doing too well lately in my tips, but time will only tell. And then hopefully the Trent Barrett era, or the interim Trent Barrett era, gets off to a good start and Parramatta get the victory. I hope you enjoyed this game day preview. If this is the sort of thing that you like and want to hear more of, please give me a 5-star review and rating, and also leave a bit of feedback as well. That would be most appreciated. Always like looking through the feedback there to know if I'm doing something well, or if indeed I'm not doing something good as well that I can probably pick up on. But thank you very much for listening to this game day preview. Parramatta Eels versus the South Sydney Rabbitohs, round 12, Indigenous Round. Get around it, watch it, and look, may the best team win. But as I always say, the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave podcast.